Hey, that's us, WDXE, and it is Friends and Neighbors with Jeff Hood, yours truly, and my good friend today is Mr. James Gordon Freeze, back for round two.
The sequel.
The sequel, yeah. I'm so pleased you agreed to do that. We didn't get anywhere
asking.
near through
No.
talking. We probably won't ever get through talking.
Probably
I mean,
won't.
we could talk for days, and there's no doubt about it. And you and I have.
And we have.
And we have.
We left here last time and went and had breakfast
That's right.
and talked for another hour
That's
and a half.
right. We
you
sure
know.
did. We sure
Yeah,
did.
Had a
And,
good time.
Always enjoy good company.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, always.
I
don't know
love
where,
fellowship.
I don't know where you found good company in me, but I had good company in you. That's
I
for sure.
did, and you also.
I sure did, and I appreciate you coming back here this morning. And by the way, I never say it, almost never, but this hour is brought to you by Hood Company, Keller Williams Hood Company, and we have a real estate service. If you didn't know, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I almost never mention that, but
You should mention your real job.
But I should
Yeah.
mention my every once in a while. But I know people that listen to this station know that about me, and I don't pound on it too much. Don't wear them out about it, you know.
Yeah, but I did business with you, and it was a great experience.
Well, yeah, that's
In the
right.
auction.
That's
When
right.
you auctioned my
sell
dad's home.
We got to sell your property
Yeah.
there for your folks'
And
place.
it was just a great experience.
yeah, we
all the way around.
We appreciate you letting us do that. It was a good sale.
It
Good
was
sale.
fantastic.
I still regret that I didn't buy that Ovation guitar.
Well, and you know, Mac Brown was upset that he didn't get it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there was two or three of us there that wanted it, and but now sometimes being the auctioneer and being in the business and doing it, I don't always like to buy when there's people that are there at my sale trying to buy stuff. I don't want to compete with them too much. At the same time, I don't want to let them steal it.
right, right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was cool that the guy was there on his cell phone for the great Travis Womack.
That's right, Travis Womack.
And he bought that Martin.
That's right, bought the Martin. Sure
Yeah.
did. I got to meet him after that.
Yeah.
Because he and I hooked
Daniel.
up to deliver that. And Daniel got to meet him and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, the Snake Man. Great guitar player.
That's right. That's right. Well, speaking of great guitar players, do you know what Lanny Hurst called me this morning
Oh, okay.
while I was on the air? And he's been looking forward to hearing you again and knows about your career with
Yeah, he does.
throughout, but also in particular with Bill Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I went back and kind of looked at our interview, our last interview, and we'd kind of gotten up to that, and we quickly talked about how you got to be with Bill Anderson. We're going to back up and punt just a little bit and come to that. But anyway, Lanny told the story off the air to me about him and Shelby going to the Grand Ole Opry, and you were there playing for Bill Anderson, and they played a song. Y'all played a song called "The Golden Guitar,"
Oh, yeah.
and so he asked me if I could find it and play it, and I did. I found it on YouTube, and I don't know that I'd ever heard it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever heard that song, but anyway. Whispering Bill, that's one of those places where he gets
Yes,
that
sir.
nickname because
Yeah.
that's one of those places. But
Yeah.
anyway, Lanny called me and said that him and Shelby were actually there one of the nights when y'all played that song on the Opry stage.
Yeah.
How about that?
The writer of that song is from Texas. I'm trying to think of his name right now. I'm terrible about that these days.
So Bill, that's one Bill
It's
didn't write.
one of the few songs
Really?
that Bill did not write. And
How about that?
he usually tells that when he sets up the song. And here's the interesting thing about it. A week before the song was released, that was a #1 song. And one time it was played like crazy back in the day. And I can't tell you what year it came out. I'm going to say early 70s. But the writer of the song was killed in a tragic car accident a week before. He never got to hear it on the radio.
Oh.
And it just, but which is kind of ironic because there's a death in
There's
that
a death in the song.
recitation.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
but it's one of the better songs, and we have not done it in a long time because Les Singer, that was with Bill for almost 40 years, the guitar player, was featured on that, and he played it so well. And Les has not been with us in several years now.
Well, that must have been what Lanny was talking about, that whoever it was, that he didn't mention the name. But
Yeah.
it must have been him that
It
said
was
he
Les,
played that Martin guitar.
Played his Martin, and that was his mother's guitar, and it's a 1964 or 65.
Wow.
And it's a great sounding
Wow.
It really is.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I showed you a picture of Daniel playing there. That's a Martin that I just bought.
Oh, man.
Not long ago, and I bought it from a guy, and he shipped it to me. I forget where it came from. It came from a pretty good way off.
Mm-hmm.
But I traded for it and bought it, and then had a local gentleman work on it, fix it up, and it's nice.
Set up right.
Yeah,
Good.
set up good. It's nice, plays well. Anyway,
That's cool.
Well, I was looking back at where we left off, and we could go in almost any direction, I guess, with you. But you've had, I forget now, 40. How many years with Bill?
I've been with him for, this coming February will be 33 years.
33 years. 33 years. I was thinking about you there, and I know that, you just told that story about that song. But there's probably countless stories of, and I don't want you to think about it. I want you to name drop, but I do want you to name drop. Because you got to meet a lot of opera stars, right and left and beyond opera stars.
Yeah.
But names that that those of us who tune in to Nashville radio have heard all of our lives, and Hee Haw and all those shows, all those country music stars. You have rubbed elbows with most of them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's stories, all kinds of stories behind some of those experiences. But I want to go back and rehearse how you got to be with Bill Anderson, and you may have to back up a little ways to tell how it all developed and got to come to be.
Well, I'll tell about how I did get the job again with Bill, and then we probably need to backtrack and how I got to that place and through some more of my gospel music stuff.
If you want to do that, that'd be fine.
I probably need to go back quite a bit. Yeah, because we left. In fact, I made some notes today so I wouldn't forget. Yeah, some things.
Well, some years have passed.
Yeah, and a lot of things and a lot of people I've played for that I would be remiss if I didn't mention these folks who got me to where I ended up at the Grand Ole Opry. But anyway, I thought of the gentleman that my dad worked for at H.G. Hills. It was Fred Mathis. And he was the manager down when it was downtown, which is now Weathers Brothers Music. Yeah, and that was amazing? The first H.G. Hills. And he just loved Fred, and Fred, it was just like his mentor, and Pat tried to pattern himself after him, and then he became the meat market guy. But that's what happened. But before that, I forgot to mention also that Dad was a World War II veteran. Oh, wow. And he was there after, he was at Pearl Harbor after the attack, and was there with the guys who were in the Navy that were protecting the island after that period. And he was, I think he was discharged in 46, I want to say. Okay. I think it was 1946, but he was in the Navy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's a couple of things about my dad I forgot to talk about last week. Wow. But I'm glad we did mention
Gosh, if we could just remember everything.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to remember. Through the years, I was asked, since we did the last show, I had some people text me and say, well, how did you maintain going to school, and trying to keep up your education while you were still playing for some?
That's a good question.
And it is a good question, and I need to let folks know that I did continue trying my best to do the best I could through school. I wasn't always the best student, but I did best I could, and to keep my chops up musically, I worked just like you did some singing with the Kellys. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed hearing you talk about that last week with John. Well, I did the same thing on weekends with what you'd call the weekend warriors or part-time gospel singers here. Right. And so I worked while you were singing with the Kellys. I think I was with the Revelers Quartet from Columbia. Right. And they were based out of Hohenwald also. Before that, I was with the Lowell McGee Singers
I
from
remember
down
them.
in Busby,
I
Church
remember both
God.
of those, yeah.
Played drums for them. I played Fender Rhodes piano for the Revelers. I started playing piano again, and I was with them, I guess, till I'm going to say about 1976, somewhere in there. And I graduated from here in LCHS in 75. I'm class of 75, and was in the band there the whole 4 years, and was
Yeah.
band captain, president, but I was a drummer,
Yeah.
and was there the 4 years that they became the Big Gold Machine. And that was our claim to fame there.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Tankersley came. The 4 years I was there, he was there, and changed the name of the band from the Wildcats to the Big Gold Machine, and
Really?
they've been that ever since.
They have been that ever since.
Ever since.
I didn't know that story.
That
behind
happened that 4 years I was there.
I
he
kind
was
of
there.
assumed they were always the Big Gold
Yeah,
Machine. How about that?
they had been the Wildcat band,
Oh, okay.
before then. And so when Mr. T, as we called him, came, that's how that happened there at LCHS. And then I went back out on the road that when I graduated with the Seagulls for the second time as their piano player, and we did a TV show in Nashville called the Music City Special. And on that show, Jeff, were a lot of country stars. They would be, Dolly did the show, George Jones, Webb Pierce.
Really?
I could just go on. Every week we would have a country music star as a guest.
Okay.
And so, which was cool. So we got to meet those people, and the groups that were on that TV show were the Kingsmen, Willie Wynn and the Tennesseans.
I remember them. Yeah.
And that's right after Willie left the Oak Ridge Boys, and then the Seagull Brothers and Naomi.
Yeah.
And then I did that, left them to go to college, went to Columbia State, graduated from there, and played in their stage band, and continued to play for the Revelers Quartet on the weekends when I could do that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, the Seagulls show that they did, of course, it was I think you mentioned it was a syndicated.
Yeah, that was the first show. The early one. Yeah.
Are those still? Are those still viewable anywhere? Are they out and about?
Let me
anywhere?
tell you, I found where Bill Gaither had got his hands on those somehow, and he put one of them on a VHS tape of the Seagull Brothers and Naomi. And there's one of me, you can see me playing drums as a kid on there. And it's just maybe one song or two on that tape, along with tons of other stuff. But the Seagulls, the original group.
Right.
I never was with the group that was called Naomi and the Seagulls.
Yeah.
That came later after the brothers passed away.
Okay.
But I was there when James Seco died in 1979.
Oh, wow.
It was a tragic thing where he died on the operating table, had open heart surgery. He's only 51 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so that funeral was something else. I mean, the Oak Ridge Boys were there. J.D. Sumner and the Stamps sang. Happy Goodman family sang.
Oh, my.
In Macon. We had a funeral in Nashville and one in Macon, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
And so the Goodmans came to that one and sang it.
Wow.
And that's the original Goodmans.
Well, the gospel music families and singers, they have kind of a kinship with one another, I guess.
They do.
They network with each other quite well.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, it's interesting though to think about.
Yeah.
So that's those kind of things.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Goodmans and the Hemphills were actually related to one another.
Okay.
Through Labriska Hemphill. She was a daughter to one of the Goodman women that sang back in the day. There used to be a all-female quartet of Goodman women.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, with a woman bass singer. It was amazing. I wish I could have witnessed it, saw it. I just heard it on record.
Yeah.
But my mom and dad would talk about how amazing that was to see.
Yeah.
Them went 4 women. And Ruth was the bass singer, and she would come. And she was a sister to Rusty and Sam Goodman and Howard Goodman.
Yeah.
And of course, Howard married Vestal, that
Yes.
became famous. You know?
Vestal, of course, everybody who ever knows anything about gospel music knows who Vestal
They
Goodman
know who
the
Vestal
Goodmans,
Goodman is,
the
yeah.
Happy Goodman fan. And you know, there was a early in my childhood, we had WDXE on in the mornings when I'd get up to go to school, elementary school. I'm talking about from like my earliest memories of going to school. The radio would be on WDXE. The old Trading Post music would come on, all that kind of stuff. And there was a gospel song that was played repeatedly during those years. And I always thought, when I got grown, I thought it was Vestal Goodman, but it wasn't. It was the Whites. And did you ever run across the Whites?
Yeah.
And it was "He'll Roll Me Over the Tide."
Yeah.
You remember that song?
Yes. Yeah.
I always loved that song.
Yeah.
So when I got to do the radio station here, I got to looking for it, but I was looking for it with the Goodmans.
Yeah.
I kept trying. I thought, well, I know they did that song, and then finally somebody told me that knew that I was looking in the wrong spot. So I used to play it every once in a while here, just because I've always liked it.
Oh, yeah.
But we got generations here now have never heard it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, never.
And that's the thing about the Southern Gospel thing is, and in producing the Kelly's projects, and it's not just by my suggestion, the guys themselves love to go back and pull out old quartet songs that would be new to a new audience. You know, those are new songs to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
The old Statesman things and stuff. And they need to be re-sung. And there's a lot of stuff buried on those albums, because a lot of those LPs had 14 songs on it, and they would put out, for RCA, they'd put out 3 records a year back in those days in the 60s. Man, that's just loads of stuff. J.D. Sumner himself wrote nearly 600 gospel songs.
No way. I did not know that.
He wrote Old Country Church, tons of stuff that the Blackwoods, and I remember reading stories where they would be driving from Memphis to Nashville to do a new album. Of course, Chet Atkins was putting all that together and being the executive producer of those albums for RCA. And on the way, J.D. would be in the back of the car with a guitar. He was a guitar player. A lot of people didn't know that. And playing chords and writing lyrics as they went to the studio, and they would learn those songs in the studio.
Wow.
Just amazing stuff back in those days, how they did that. You know, I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did.
That's good. Well, the long story short is that you grew up, literally grew up playing gospel music in one fashion or another.
That's right.
And with multiple groups. And then, so this led to a career. I mean, an absolute career.
Yeah. Had I not gotten that break with Wendy Bagwell, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? But because of that, I would be there playing for them on package dates, and then the Rambos would say, their piano players said, could you stay up here and play for us? We don't have a drummer. Okay. I did the same thing with the Stamps a few times. Tony Brown asked me to stay on stage. And so Eddie Crook suggested to James Seco, said, why don't we take this kid on the road with us this summer? And what happened, Jeff, that summer, it was pretty interesting. It was in the Singing News magazine. And it was called, I think the title was The Kids of the Summer of '69, kind of thing.
How about it? Okay.
So the reason nobody remembers me is for this reason. There were 4 of us, drummers. There was Rick Goodman with the Goodman family. He had already been out there for a while. So had Billy Blackwood, who is a very good friend of mine to this day. And so is Rick, playing drums with the Stamps, I think, then. Not his dad's group, the J.D. Sumner and the Stamps. And then Steve Spear of the Spear family.
Okay.
Then there's James Gordon Freeze with the Seagos. See, I wasn't a Seago. I wasn't a name that anybody could remember. So people could remember these guys because they were playing for their families.
Right.
I was not playing for my family, so it was a little harder for me to get name recognition and hang with those guys. But somehow I did, and became friends with all of them.
Well, you know what's interesting I thought about just now is that drums originally probably weren't a part of the gospel music
No, it's
scene.
just a piano.
So gospel music and quartet singing was basically a piano.
That's right.
That's it. So the bands really didn't develop all that
They
much.
started evolving in the late 60s,
Yeah.
and people like the Goodmans wanted to sound like their records, and they had the A-Team in Nashville playing on their records by then.
Yeah.
And so did the Hemp Hills and some of those great, the Hensons especially.
Oh, yeah, they were huge.
I
at one
mean,
time.
big time bands, you know, and some of my buddies still play on these sessions with us, played with the Hensons, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it all evolved into that. And we had steel guitar players and electric guitar players and drummers. And it started out like we talked about before, just snare drum. Then it evolved into a whole set of drums.
Yeah.
And then it totally went away.
Did you ever run into any resistance for drums?
Yes.
For drums.
Oh, here's you a good one.
Drums being it, because I know that did. I know they did.
Oh, yeah. I had to sit on the bus some Sundays, and I probably ought not mention the denominator. Yeah, I can mention them because they don't do this anymore. They finally got away with it. It's the Nazarene Church. The Nazarenes would not allow anything. In fact, they would not allow us to sell our merchandise in the church.
Okay,
See?
okay.
We had to sell it out front on the front porch or in front of the bus or something.
Right.
But I'll never forget this on one of those first tours, James Seago saying, "Well, son," said, "you'll get to sit on the bus this morning and watch TV," you know, and we had a little black and white TV on there. He said, "Because these folks here frown on the drums, said you won't be played." So that didn't happen too often, but it did happen a few times.
Many years ago, I'll tell a quick story
Go
because
ahead.
this is about you, but it was a time when I was playing with the Kellys, and I played. I think I played the bass.
Okay.
I think this is right. Anyway, John couldn't go.
Okay.
And for where we were going, we couldn't go. It was a church here in the county.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, they decided that I should play the drums, and I could play. I could play the drums enough to get by.
Sure.
Okay, I wasn't nowhere near James Gordon Freeze, but I could play. But as a part of, we had a little band solo that they would let us do.
Yeah.
Okay. Every time we played anywhere,
Instrumental.
they would let us do an instrumental. And during that instrumental, we had a little bit of a drum solo. Okay.
Oh.
But this was at a church.
Oh, me.
Okay. And I remember being so uptight about hitting the drums so loud, you know, because they can get loud, especially in a small, echoey little church.
Right.
You know. So anyway, that's just brought back a memory because I knew that people kind of frowned on the drums a little bit. You know?
It was a tough time for drummers in the early days. And that kind of change. Now, I've got to tell this story because if I don't, folks will say, "Why didn't you tell the Elvis story?"
Oh, you got to tell it.
So I got to tell it. This is National Quartet Convention, 1970. In the last year of the Quartet Convention was in Memphis.
Yeah.
And if anybody out there knows anything about Elvis Presley, he absolutely adored gospel music of that time. And he knew the words to everything. He had everybody's records.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know that. And he would just wear out his background singers wanting to sing those songs all night long, and they're needing to rest and sleep. Yeah. But he was, he was nocturnal. He stayed up all night and slept in the daytime, you know. So you had to stay up with him and sing all night. So that's but it was gospel stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this particular quartet convention, Elvis shows up, and he's backstage. The Ellis Auditorium was laid out with an east and west wing.
Yeah.
And they opened up both curtains, and people would be on both sides. So the singers would be out in the middle and would just turn from side to side during the songs. So the musicians had to set up on the side over here to the singers, kind of facing the singers. So we had a set of drums that all of us could play. And I was there with the Seago brothers and Naomi.
Yeah.
Didn't know that I'd be playing in front of Elvis Presley. So Elvis was up on a box about as high as this desk, where they fixed this thing where he could stand up and see everybody well over the people, Of course, he could not sing. They wouldn't let him sing, because of the money thing. Colonel Tom wouldn't allow that. But J.D. did introduce him, and he came out, made a circle, and waved to both sides of the crowd.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it was really cool, and I'll never forget it. I can tell you right now what he was wearing.
I know that you are personally a huge Elvis fan.
Big time.
Yes.
And so I have never forgot. So my back is to him. He's behind me. And he couldn't be no more than, 15 or 20 feet away. And I could turn around and just see him stand there. And I'll never forget this medallion he had on that kept catching the light, you know. And so I could hear him singing the stuff with us, Well, Eddie Crook's playing the piano. He was still with us, but that's right before he went with the Happy Goodman family. And I'm glued to Elvis playing the drums. So I'm turned around. I am turned all the way around, but continuing to play. Finally, Eddie Crook in his monotone says, "Quit staring at him. Turn around." Quit staring at him. And so I did. I finally came to myself because I was just mesmerized. Your word of 2 weeks ago. And so, it was quite a thing. So Ronnie Seago, who was not playing drums yet, and I go outside of the Ellis Auditorium and look for his car. And we found it. And his car's sitting out there. It's a big black Lincoln. There were two of them there. We tapped on the window, of a tinted window, and the window comes down, and it's George Klein. I didn't know who George Klein was at the time.
Okay.
Now I do. He was a famous, had a TV show, radio show in Memphis, and was one of Elvis's best friends. And we asked him, could we get in the car? And he said, no kidding. He goes, well, I'll let you boys sit in here for a little while. So we get in there, and this is glued to me. I'd never been in a car that had a television in it, and it had a little black and white TV down here in the middle, in the bottom, and Bewitched was playing on the TV. I've never forgot that Bewitched was on.
Yeah.
And we sat and watched it, and he had a walkie-talkie, and apparently they called him, and he asked us, boys, you're going to have to get out of the car because he's ready to go back to Graceland. Oh, and we're thinking, oh, heck, we're going to get to see him here in a minute. So we hide around the corner of the auditorium outside, and here he comes, and the guys are running with him. It's like you always see,
How cool is
and
that?
they jump in those cars and just spin out of there and head out, and people were chasing, trying to see him, and everything. But we got to sit in that car for a little while, and that was a treat, and thanks to George Klein. So years later, after I read George's book, Eddie Bell, my best friend in Nashville, Eddie and I were with our wives in Memphis, and we saw him in a restaurant there, and we went over and talked to him, and I told him that story, and he loved that. Of course, he didn't remember, but he loved it. He says, I don't doubt that happened. He said, and I said, well, I have never forgotten it, George, and you let us get in the back of Elvis's car and sat there for a little while,
You're a hero, man.
Man, it was something. I couldn't believe. And I've been asked if I've been nervous on stage. I got butterflies first time I played the Opry, and I'm standing there, and the red curtain goes up. And I didn't think that would hit me like it did, but it did. I
that's a big deal.
froze. It just, and I looked at the people, and I thought about who all had been on that stage.
Yeah.
And I just got emotional about it standing
sure.
there. It just really got to me. But I'll have to say, I sweat a few bullets there in front of Elvis Presley
I'm
that
sure.
day. You know.
Well, listen, you said your first time on the stage at the Opry. Was that with Bill Anderson?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah. Now I played the Opry with the Seagulls a few times, but it was the gospel Opry they had on Sunday nights.
Okay.
But my first appearance on there on the Grand Ole Opry itself was with Bill. Yeah.
Okay. What year was that?
91, February 91.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was it was quite a neat experience for sure, because I wasn't used to the way they do the Opry. I mean, you're on and off and then back on, and and you're plugging up, unplugging, and you're setting your amp right quick, and guys who aren't used to that, I can tell when they walk out there, they're thinking, oh my goodness, we got to do this in a hurry.
You got to rush it up.
You got to rush it up. So I got used to that.
It was the live radio show.
Yeah. Still is, yeah.
It still is. So it's like it moves. You can't just set up and take your time with it.
No, and there's stage hands constantly moving on and off.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely different. Yeah, it's not a concert for sure.
I'm still looking forward to my trip.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you coming too. Yeah, we'll have a ball.
I've never been to the Opry. Never been to the Grand Ole Opry.
Even out front, you never sat out.
Never even sat out front.
You'll love it.
I've never been.
Well, you're gonna love it.
It's one of those things that why haven't I? I should have.
Well,
but
I know
I've never done it.
We meet people in Nashville that's lived there for years, and they'll say,
"Never been."
They say, "You know what? We should go." Yeah. I said, "Yeah, you should. You mean you've lived here for 50, 60 years, and you've never been to the Grand Ole Opry?"
It's a historic piece of Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, especially Middle Tennessee.
American music, yeah.
American
history.
Music. It's awesome. It's awesome. Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, we've come almost full circle, and we've brought you up from a kid playing for all these gospel groups. You played in front of Elvis. How old were you when that happened?
13.
13. Wow.
1970. Yeah, I was 13. Yeah, it was a neat thing.
Wow.
And, yeah.
Let's see if we got a phone call wants to talk to us. I bet. Hey, good morning.
Jeff.
Yes.
I wanted to tell James Gordon something. I don't think I've ever told him this, but I'm 80 years old now, but I can remember when I was 5 and 6 years old, we lived at St. Joe. And his mother and my mother were great friends, and they stayed friends their whole lives. But I remember going to their house a few times when I was 5 and 6 years old. That was way before James Gordon was born.
Yeah.
But I remember how his mother and my mother were such great friends.
Oh, very close friends. Lanny, I still have. You're not going to remember this. You gave me my first baseball glove, and it had your name on the thumb part of and I still have that leather baseball glove to this day.
No kidding.
He gave me
and
it's the old 50s looking glove. It's not a modern style glove, but Lanny, I still have that ball glove. I couldn't let it go.
I'm glad. Well, hey, it's good hearing y'all this morning.
Well, good.
Thank you, Lanny.
Thank you for calling in.
Our good friend Lanny Hurst there, and
Yeah.
His mom, and your mom. How about that?
Oh man, yeah,
How
they
about
were
that?
very close.
How about that?
Yeah, she was big in the Eastern Star. My mother was not, but my dad was such a big, so big in the Masons that's how they knew each other
okay.
too. That's partly how they knew one another.
Let's see if someone else wants to talk to us. Hey, good morning. You're on with us here on WDXE.
Yeah, James Gordon. Can you tell me the story of Bill getting all of those entertainers together who recorded tips of my finger? That was a great record.
Yeah, it was. That song has actually been number one in the charts by 5 different artists. The last one was Steve Warner's cut of that, which is probably one of my favorites. But he did do a later recording of that and brought back everybody that had done, which was Roy Clark, Gene Shepard, some of these people who had recorded, Steve Warner. And,
I believe Eddie Arnold was another one.
Eddie Arnold was the first that had the number one. You're right on that song.
How about that?
And and by the way, since you brought that up, that is my favorite of all time Bill Anderson songs, and he knows that. I tell him, I said, the best song you ever wrote is Tips of My Fingers. Some of the artists just called it Tip of My Fingers, but it's Tips of My Fingers, and it's just, to me, it's an ultimate country song. And Steve Warner's cut of that in 91 or 92, I believe it was, because he played the fair down here when that song was number one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Steve, and I got to tell Steve, because I was at the Opry already then. And by the way, Steve Warner, I'm always asked, who's the nicest guy at the Grand Ole Opry? It's Steve Warner.
I would have guessed.
I mean, bar none. He knows my name when I see him.
Yeah.
It ain't, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, James, in the hallway, and he'll want to stop and talk, know. He's a musician's musician. So is Vince Gill.
Oh, yeah.
But Steve is such an incredible soul and wonderful guy.
Hey, brother, I'm going to let you go where you can listen on there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. He would be one that I would ask about.
Yeah.
Steve Warner, because he's
What
such a
wonderful guy.
Such a talent, too.
Yeah.
And he does seem like just a genuinely
He's so genuine.
good guy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've never seen anything out of the way about this guy.
I met Vince Gill once.
Yeah, okay.
It was on the golf course.
Of course. He's a
big golfer.
huge, he's big time
He was
golfer.
a big golfer, and I had taken my daughter, Missy, who was playing high school golf at the time, up to the Electrolux tournament, which is up in Franklin. Mm-hmm. They were having, it was the women's LPGA were playing.
Oh, okay.
And so I wanted Missy to go up and see some of those players, and Vince was there doing some of the hosting for whatever was going on. So we were walking the course, and all of a sudden, he's on a cart, but we're having to stop because somebody's playing right up here. And he pulls up and stops right beside me. And he's sitting in the cart, and I'm standing, but he's just right there. I could reach and touch his shoulder. And I looked over and I said, "Have you seen Vince Gill anywhere here?" And he looked at me like I had three heads. I guess that was a dumb thing to say.
No, but usually he's very.
But he just looked at me.
Yeah.
He just kind of shrugged his shoulders and shook his head and drove on off.
He's very funny. He's a comical dude.
Yeah, he seemed like a good guy too.
He is. Yeah.
And I also met from Channel 4 Rudy Kalis.
Yeah.
You remember Rudy Kalis?
Yes.
He was there.
Oh, I'm a fan of Rudy.
And he was super nice. We talked for several minutes.
He would go to the Masters every year, and
yeah.
I just envied him because he'd come back and talk about it, on TV. And
well, him and
who was the other?
Dan Miller.
Dan Miller, who did that great. He's a great interviewer.
And he was on Channel 4.
And he died at the Masters, if you remember.
That's what I was mentioning.
Okay.
Because he went to the Masters too, see?
Yeah.
And he ended up passing away there. Had a heart attack or something.
Had a heart attack. They were just sitting on the side of the road. They'd gotten some sandwiches.
My family always watched Channel 4 News.
Oh, me too.
My great-grandmother was in love with Boyce Hawkins.
Yes. Great piano player, by the way. He played piano some for the Jordanaires. Oh, yeah, my mother was in love with Boyce Hawkins.
Yeah.
In fact, if he said it was going to rain, by George, it's going to rain the next day. And it's funny how, and you and I have talked about this, how we have all this Doppler stuff now.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me like when I was a kid that they got it more right then, but maybe our weather's just hard to predict nowadays. I don't know. I really don't know, but it just seemed that way as a child,
Well, I never did pay attention to the weather forecast when I was little. I never did, and I still don't to much degree. I get up and say, "Well, what's it going to do today?" That's about where I am.
Yeah.
But hey, I need to get you back. I'm going to steer you back in.
Okay.
Because we've kind of gotten to the point where I want to really find out the story and how you developed a relationship and got to be the number one bass player for Bill Anderson. And are we anywhere near there yet?
Yeah, we can go to that. I did. I'll mention that I did work with the Tennesseans for a short time.
That's right.
I worked for Smitty Gatlin till he passed away in '72. I was his drummer, and Smitty was one of the Oak Ridge boys. In fact, he owned the quartet at one time when they were called the Oak Ridge Quartet.
Yeah.
And he changed the name. He was the one that changed them to the Oak Ridge Boys.
Oh,
so that's
really?
his story.
Okay.
And Dwayne Allen replaced him in the group, and Smitty started his own. And I want to make note, and I was asked this on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, who I thought was the greatest gospel soloist of all time, and I said Smitty Gatlin. He's got one of the most incredible voices. Willie Wynn told me when I was working with the Tennesseans, and Willie called you Hoss. He'd say, Hoss?
Yeah.
He said it was hard to sing tenor above Smitty Gatlin because he was really a tenor, and he was from Giles County originally.
Oh, really?
A great gospel singer.
I got to meet Willie Wynn in the Tennessee.
Yeah.
During the time I was with the Kellys, we sang somewhere with them.
You probably did,
and he was just super nice.
Well, they had become a country act when I went with them as a drummer in 1980.
Okay.
And I was only there a short time, and the group split up. They were a backup group for Billy Craddock. And then we opened a lot for Conway Twitty, Ray Stevens. I remember opening for him. Then dead of winter came, and we were working every Holiday Inn. We were in Fargo, North Dakota.
In the
winter, the dead of winter for weeks. And that's when I decided it's time to ease back into the gospel music field, and I did. But the group did split by that spring. And that's when I went with the Goodmans, the form of the Goodmans that I worked with for a few years. Then I worked with the Hemp Hills till they disbanded, and then I did a year with the Neelands. And that's how I got inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2016, was through the coattail of the Neelands, because they were inducted, and they brought back everybody, their entire alumni. Really? I don't know that that's ever been done in 2016. So, and I would say that was because Rex Neeland, the bass singer, who passed away way before that, but he was there when I was with him. And I'd say that was his idea, probably, or his son Todd's, or the daughter Kelly, because that was enormous to do that. It was a lot of us too.
Oh yeah.
Every band member, because I went with them as a drummer for a good while, and we came here and played down at Shawnee T, and I was playing drums that night in 1990, and then I went back to bass for a little while with the Neelands. Then I got the call to go with Bill Anderson. Been there ever since, and singing too with him.
You got to travel a bunch with that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Been all over.
Yeah, everywhere.
Did y'all play Branson much or any?
Yeah, we've been to Branson several times. We didn't have a theater there, but we played Ray Stevens' theater, different ones.
Who all has a theater? Or
I don't know who's got.
Changed.
It's changed now. Ray sold his, and he's built one in Nashville. Ray Stevens is probably the wealthiest country music artist there is, I guess, and
really,
because he owns so much real estate. He owned a lot of Music Row and all that there, and some studios and things. And then his theater,
not to mention the songs he's written.
The songs he's written and stuff. So and he's older than, I think, maybe he's about the same age as Bill, but. So he don't have to work if he didn't want to, but he enjoys that theater up there.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's pretty cool.
I've heard some people that have been up there that really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a dinner theater, and the food's good. And
that's neat.
Entertainment's good. But, yeah, we played Branson several times. But we'd go out to California, and we played every province in Canada. And the Canadians absolutely loved the older country singers. We did a tour in 2004 and 5. They love it. And on this tour was Kitty Wells and her husband, Johnny Wright. all these people dead now. George Hamilton IV was on that tour with us, and we were the backup band for everybody. And Bill sang and hosted the show.
Okay.
And that was it. We did the western side of Canada first year. The next year we did the eastern side. Now that took up a lot of days, a lot of work, and I'm talking one-nighters.
Oh yeah.
And Kitty Wells was probably nearly 90 years old by this time. You know.
Oh my goodness.
She could walk out on stage, Jeff, and the audience would go ahead and give her an ovation before she sung a note.
Really?
Yeah, she was that well respected up
Wow.
there. But that was a great tour.
Now, I mentioned name dropping. You can have you, is there any of the, I guess, legendary type country stars that you haven't met? I mean,
I don't know. I've met Garth
you probably
Brooks.
met them pretty much all
Yeah,
at one time or another. Or been on
Willie Nelson, I have not. We worked a thing for Willie down in at Billy Bombs, but he stayed on the bus. Of course, Bill and he are tight, and Bill went on the bus and talked to him. But I didn't get to go over there and meet Willie. But I would say but I've met Dolly a couple of times backstage. But Willie, if he's been at the Opry, it must have been when I wasn't there. So
Yeah.
I've never met Willie Nelson.
He's one of my favorites.
Mine too.
Mainly because of his guitar.
Yeah, I know it. And he has such a unique style, and I love the way he plays.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention, because you mentioned in Willie Nelson, this is something about you that I know. And you and I kind of have this in common. We found out after we started getting together and talking so much. You've got a passion for the songwriter, and you showed it this morning because you played one of my favorites, Gordon Lightfoot. I mean, well, that's one of Bill's old friends, and he respects his writing.
Oh yeah.
And so I just happen to know that you have that kind of. That's the stuff if people listen in every morning, you will slip in either a crochet thing or a, you know what I'm saying? And it's like that thing this morning that you played by him. That's one of my favorite things, and it's so well written.
It is.
And those chord changes are just.
It is.
It's just genius.
Beautiful
work.
Tell you another one is the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yes.
That song is so written. I mean, goodness gracious.
What an anthem.
It'll put chills on you.
It does it every time I hear it.
If you know the story,
it'll
put chills on you.
Every time.
I took my, I know we're getting off of the
That's
James
all
Bond
right.
subject, but we just enjoy talking.
This is good. Yeah, go.
But I made my children sit and listen to that song, told them the story of that ship. And I said, y'all listen to this song. And it'll make you weep if you understand what's going on. Yeah. Did you know the story after somewhere there's a church where it's mentioned in the song. About, it rings 29 times, but 29 people died. That when Gordon Lightfoot passed away,
did they do that?
They had a service at this church and rang it 29 times and then one more time for Gordon Lightfoot on that song. How about that? It's pretty awesome.
You've messed with me this morning already.
Pretty awesome.
I just think it's great.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. So anyway, James Gordon Freeze, we're running out of time again.
Yeah, I know it. We'll have to get together again.
I gotta mention. You were mentioning piano players. Do you remember? And I think you and I have talked about this. You remember a fellow named Jerry Hunter?
Man, do I?
He was a piano player.
He was a piano playing beast.
He was a beast.
That's the way I can put it.
Yeah.
He would play. He'd overplay.
And of course,
if he
I
could.
know you know my buddy Barry Springer.
Barry's good. I taught Barry for a while.
Now Barry, he ended up going over to
Sevierville, was he?
Mm-hmm. And played in some theaters over there for somebody.
Yeah.
For quite some. But I don't think he played piano. Or did he?
I thought it was piano because he came to me to learn the number system, as we talked about.
I know he played piano, but I'm talking about over there. Over there, I thought he might have played bass.
He might have. I don't know. But I thought I was preparing him to go over there and
well, that may be
play.
It too. He could do either.
At least read the numbers for either instrument.
Well, he could do either, and I think he's kind of retired now. He's hanging around here some. I see him every once in a while.
I'd love to see him sometime.
He's hanging around here locally. Barry's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
We called him Bolt.
Bolt?
Yeah, Bolt. And that came from...
What did
That came from when we were with the Kellys together, he and I.
Yeah.
And they were remodeling the bus, and we were helping do it.
Oh.
They were doing it themselves. We were hammering and knocking, and he couldn't say bolt correctly.
Oh.
It was bolt or something. Bolt.
Yeah, that's why I had to ask you.
And he looked around. He kept asking for a bolt, and we stuck with him. We called him Bolt from then on.
Bolt.
Anyway, old Bolt.
Man.
Barry Springer, good guy.
Y'all had Jimmy Wells playing with you
did.
back then.
Yeah, we
I've
mentioned-
tried to catch him after y'all were talking about him last week, and he's on a promo picture with us, with the Revelers. So
Yeah.
I think he came with us. In fact, I know he did. He came and played steel guitar for the Revelers Quartet after he left the Kellys for a while.
Yeah.
And John thought he went with Hank Snow, but didn't. Hank Snow never had a pedal steel guitar player. Caton Roberts was the famous stand-up steel guitar player for Hank Snow all those years. And I got to know Caton at the Opry, very nice guy. But actually, I found out that Jimmy Wells went and did a few weeks with Charlie McClain, the female country singer from Memphis that had a career that lasted into the 80s. She started about 76 and I think lasted into the 80s. But I don't think Jimmy was there very long. I don't know what happened, if he just didn't fit the gig or what, from what I was told.
Yeah.
I have not seen him since back then. But I have tried to find him, and I have had no luck finding him in Columbia.
Yeah.
Our old guitar player, Kenny Malugin, played Telecaster for us before Jimmy came along. He had not seen him either. I called him last week. We tried to stay in touch, and he didn't know where Jimmy had ended up.
I haven't heard from him, I guess since the days that I played with him.
Yeah, same here.
Way back when.
Yeah, but I remember him being a talented fellow back those days. He was good.
So what's on the horizon for James Gordon Freeze? We got a couple minutes.
What's just still doing the Opry. I'm off this weekend, then I go back on the 28th, and then I'm playing on Halloween night. And I don't know what's going to happen that night. I've played on Halloween before with Bill there, but it's landing on a Tuesday night that we're booked, and it's the same day as Halloween. So that might be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
But,
and for folks that don't know, where can they tune in, see the Opry, or hear the Opry?
Well, if you have Sirius XM radio, we're on an hour delay, but on Tuesday nights and Saturday nights you can listen to the Opry on Willie's Roadhouse.
Okay.
And I can't tell you what that is on the XM dial. I just got it programmed in, but it's Willie's Roadhouse, and it sounds great as opposed to 6:50 a.m. WSM that it's been on for so long, which is I can barely even get it anymore on my radios.
Who's the famous announcer up there with?
Well, it was Eddie Stubbs, but
Stubbs.
Eddie retired just a couple of years ago.
That's who I was trying to think of. Was Eddie Stubbs.
And now we have Cody. What's his name? It's on in the mornings.
I haven't.
Great
tuned in.
guy. He's great. He's a morning guy, and he's on at night. And then Mike Terry is also there, and they're great announcers. But Eddie Stubbs got quite famous there, because he was like a historian. He was like Ronnie, Ronnie Allen. Kind of guy. And I need, which reminds me, I'd love to go see Ronnie sometime.
I had him here on the show.
And how is Ronnie doing?
He seemed to be doing well.
Good.
Seemed to be doing well. He was
Fantastic.
here with me one morning, and I think he tunes in here and there.
Good.
Bill Cody.
Bill Cody, yes.
I got a friend who helps me.
Oh, Bill is great, and he's become a friend, and I like him. I like to hear him.
We're going to run out of time, old buddy.
We've had a good one.
We
It's
always
been another good
always
one.
have
And
a good one.
flies too.
Yeah,
We got a lot in.
we did.
I think we squeezed a lot in today.
We're going to do more, and we're going to.
Yeah.
We got more to do.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be at the Opry when?
The 28th, which is a week from Saturday. And then I'll be there again on the 31st.
31st.
And I'll be there in November and December. I don't have the dates yet, but
Okay. Good deal.
know, I should find that out this week sometime, I'm sure.
Well, God bless, brother. Good to
God
see you.
bless you, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, buddy.
President Biden continues to meet with Israelis. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News.
The United States stands